Hi there, my name is Andrew and I'm a certified Nuke trainer and a compositing artist with over a decade of experience in the industry. During this time, I've had the chance to work with major studios like Framestore and MPC, contributing to iconic projects like Avengers Endgame, Mufasa the Lion King, Fantastic Beasts, Paddington 2 and many more. I can bet you may have seen my work already. Right now I'm focused on helping beginner compositors, those just starting out on their journey in this exciting yet challenging field. My goal is to help you learn as quick and effectively as possible, so you can jump into real-world projects and deliver industry-level quality in your work, creating visual masterpieces that will captivate audience worldwide. But as with any craft, the road to success isn't always easy. Mastering Nuke in compositing requires a deep understanding of various techniques, and you'll face plenty of challenges along the way. One of the essential skills you'll need to learn is cleanup. Today I want to share a method, or should I say the method, I use in my own work to help you effectively remove unwanted elements from your plate so you can work faster and more precisely. I shoot a few shots around the streets of London that will serve as a great foundation for our discussion. In this video, we will break down the universal cleanup algorithm, a simple, effective approach to solving common compositing challenges you'll encounter in your practice. This is just one of many topics I dive deep into my courses, and I'm confident that learning this technique will help you level up your skills and get closer to your goals. So, ready? Let's go then! The first shot looks like this. This is the result. Originally, the image looked like this. Here we need to remove the trash can, clothes, these hanging lanterns and the runner. As a result, all elements are removed, we cleaned up the picture. For the second shot, this is how the final result looks like. Here we need to get rid of the people in the back, the character in the front and the red button on the left. At first glance, the cleanup is about removing the objects. However, when you start working with the image, it immediately becomes clear that the essence of the cleanup is not to remove the object, but to create an image to cover elements you need to remove. Consequently, the essence of the cleanup is to create a picture that we put on top of the image so that the object was removed, and in fact visualized the image behind the removed object. In order to be able to carry out such a procedure, in order to be able to remove any objects, it is necessary to create such a picture. And the creation of such a picture is based on the universal cleanup algorithm. The idea of the universal cleanup algorithm is in these 5 steps. So we have a source image, we output a branch from this image to the right, and within this branch we perform 5 specific steps. As a result, after we have made all these 5 steps, we should have this image for this shot and this image for this shot. Then we merge them over the original plate, and as a result we finish our task. It means, in this case, we get rid of the button, the people in the background and the character on the right. And in this case, obviously, we get rid of all the unnecessary elements. Now, we need to explore what each of these steps means. Let's start with the second one, clean plate creation, because the clean plate is the foundation of the cleanup. Let's start with first shot. What do we need to remove the runner? It turns out that we can use previous frame to do that. So if we look in frame 44, that's the image. We can use it in frame 50 to remove the character. So in this case, we just need to pick the right frame, in our case it's 1035, in order to use that image to remove the object. However, it is not always the case that we pick up a frame hold and the clean plate is ready. Sometimes there are cases where we simply don't have the information in the sequence behind the object. For example, what can we frame hold to get a surface behind the trash can? Nothing. As a result, we have to resort to another way of creating a clean plate. In this case, you can take roto paint and use roto paint to carefully paint over this area. Just one of the options. You can, let's say, take this area, move it here and make the necessary manipulation. Here I blur a little bit, make color correction and add the texture I sampled from the right. I got this image. Now we don't have the trash can. This is the clean plate. But if we look further into this topic, which is how to create a clean plate, we find that there are a huge number of ways to do this. Ultimately, it's all about getting the image behind the object to be removed. For example, in this case, I needed to get rid of people right here. When I was on set, if you can call it a set, I realized that I would need to work with this area, and therefore it would be a good idea to go and take a shot of what this area behind the people looks like. Accordingly, I filmed these materials and now can use this image to remove characters from the scene. In other words, there are many ways to approach this. The main task is to create, using the available tools and materials, the image behind the object that need to be removed, so that in the end these objects are gone from the shot. After that, we move on to the next step, which is a clean patch. The clean patch is essentially just a cutting out from the clean plate the part we need to cover the object being removed. For instance, in this case, we don't need the entire image, just the portion that will eventually hide the unwanted element. So, with a clean plate like this, we cut out the necessary area using a mask, add it into the alpha and apply a premult. As a result, only the area of interest remains. This is then placed over the unwanted object, effectively removing it. In other words, we only use the relevant part of the clean plate. After that, we move on to the fourth step, modifications. Usually, if the camera is static, there's no need for additional adjustments. But typically, if we just create a static patch like this and layer it on top of the footage, it doesn't quite work. You can tell that a patch has been added because the sequence itself is dynamic. In this case, we have a dynamic camera. And if we add a static patch on top of our dynamic shot, the patch will, well, obviously just hang in the air, not much in the footage. There are 4 key issues when the patch doesn't align with the footage: changes of position, changes in the shape, color corrections, and changes in the softness of the image. In other words, the patch needs to be adjusted to fit the shot. This could mean reshaping it where necessary or trimming it. If color correction is needed, we can tweak the patch to match the color of the surrounding footage. If the shot is out of focus, or if the patch is sharper than the shot, we can apply a filter, like blur or sharpen, to make the patch blend better with the plate. Even though this shot has a static camera, if you look closely, you'll see there's a slight movement. And for this reason, after creating the clean plate and cutting out the necessary part, we need to move the patch accordingly. Match Move allows you to perform this kind of procedure, making adjustments that will ultimately help the patch to fit seamlessly in the shot. It will sit perfectly in the place and, as a result, become invisible. You can also see here that the process of cutting or reshaping the patch and color correction has been applied. This was all done to ensure it blends better with the scene. In this shot, the camera dynamics are much more noticeable, so our main focus is on adjusting the patch movement to match the camera. The next step is to deal with artifacts. We can see artifacts, the creation of the clean plate, clean patch and modifications, and again at the end, which means we need to handle artifacts both at the start and at finish. So what are these artifacts? They could be lens distortion or vignetting that comes from the camera itself. It's usually always present, but that doesn't mean it's always visible in the final image. If during the process of creating the clean plate, clean patch and modification we notice any edges or areas in the image where it's impossible to add the patch seamlessly without it being noticeable because of artifacts, then we need to address those artifacts. Specifically, we should start by removing lens distortion and vignetting. After completing these steps, we can return them, but I want to emphasize, this is only necessary if the artifacts are clearly visible and are preventing the patch from blending in smoothly. There's also another type of artifact, known as noise, which is handled separately from the universal cleanup algorithm and is adjusted for the entire shot. At the beginning, we denoise the image, and then, just before the right note, we add the noise back in. This approach isn't just limited to cleanup. It applies to keying and any other task that involves working with an image. For example, in this shot, I start by denoising the image, and instead of working with the noisy version, I work with the denoised one. The same goes for the second shot. The original image was quite noisy, but I removed the noise and then continued working with the denoised version throughout the script. Then, at the very end, just before the right note, I add the noise back in. This is where the noise is reintroduced. So, what we are doing here is working with artifacts, performing 3 actions and then returning artifacts. However, if we stop at just one branch and assume that the entire cleanup process is always done with just one branch, we are making things harder for ourselves. This is because most of the time we won't be able to handle the cleanup with just one branch. We need to recreate the image behind the objects to be removed, not for just one surface, but for several different surfaces. For example, in the first shot we need to recreate the information behind the clothes, which is on the surface. Then there's a second surface, a third surface, and the running man makes it a fourth surface. So in this case I have 4 separate adjustments happening. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Only after making all 4 adjustments I can form the final image. The same process applies to the second shot. It works separately with the surface behind the people, then adjust the area behind the bottom, and finally tweak the image behind the character on the right. After that, I combine all these elements to create the final image, which I then place over the plate. In other words, instead of creating just one branch, we need to create as many branches as necessary to accurately handle each section of the shot. First, we remove the artifacts for all surfaces. Then work on each branch separately, adjusting each surface individually. After that, we combine everything, reintroduce the artifacts, and place it on top of the plate. This method will allow you to solve any problem and tackle any shot, like this one or this one. In fact, this universal cleanup algorithm can be used to handle literally any shot. However, this doesn't mean that this universal cleanup algorithm always requires you to use all 5 steps for every shot. There are situations where we don't need to adjust the artifacts at all. Sometimes not all modifications are necessary to make the patch fit seamlessly with the plate. In some cases, it might be enough to just create a clean plate. And we can even do this within the main branch, where the main image is, rather than creating a separate branch. This can be more than sufficient to complete the task. There are many different situations. That's why it's important to understand how the process is structured, to know each stage, and to see how work is done at each stage. In the future, you'll be able to apply this knowledge situationally, as needed. Ultimately, the foundation of any cleanup work will be built on this universal cleanup algorithm. So there we have it. We have walked through the universal cleanup algorithm, and while it may seem simple, there's a lot of more depth to mastering this technique. Of course, it's impossible to cover everything in a single video, but I hope this gave you a solid starting point for tackling cleanup challenges in your own projects. If you are curious to dive deeper, my courses go far beyond what we touched on here. Together, we explore real-world shots, complex challenges, and practical workflows that will truly level up your compositing game. You'll get hands-on practice with projects designed to mimic the challenges you'll face in the industry. You'll find the link to learn more about my courses in the description below. And don't forget, this is just the beginning. Stay tuned, because in the next videos we'll explore even more techniques and insights to help you grow as a compositor. Make sure to hit subscribe, leave your thoughts or questions in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep creating.